to all of you. Today we will be discussing two exhibitions with their responsible curators. Royal Blue, William and Mary's finest Delft wear that took place at the Kunstmuseum in Den Haag. It took place until the 22nd of November. I hope you have seen it, and if you haven't, I hope our meeting today will give you a good impression of what the exhibition looked like. We have recorded 3 short videos in each exhibition, also with the aim of showing these exhibitions to those who cannot travel these days. The second exhibition, Silver, Masterpieces of Delft Silver, that's still open. It runs until January 3rd. So if you're able to go, please do so. It's worth it, as I hope we will show you today. Before I give the floor to our moderator, Femke Diercks, I would first like to say that usually CODART organizes one conference a year meant for a larger group with various topics and locations, and 2 CODARTfocus meetings a year for smaller groups focusing on one particular subject or exhibition. I know that the idea lives that CODART is a network meant only for curators dealing with the 2-dimensional arts. And I would like to emphasize that we are not, and that we are striving to attract and involve more curators who are specialized in the decorative arts as well. Please, if you have any suggestions on how we can improve this, please leave a comment in the evaluation form that you will receive after this meeting. I would like to introduce you now to Femke Diercks. She is the head of decorative arts at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam and a member of CODART's program committee. She is the one who came up with the idea for this focus, and I am sure she will guide us impeccably today. Thank you for joining us. I hope you will enjoy seeing and discussing these 2 exhibitions together. We certainly enjoyed making this focus. Femke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maartje. And so those of you who joined us CODART last week, this focus will look a little differently. We will discuss 3 topics related to the exhibitions, and part of that will be pre-recorded short clips made in the galleries, and the CODART team did an amazing job with that. And as Maartje said, we hope that that will give an impression of the exhibitions, even for those who were not able to actually come to them. After each of the topics, we will have a short discussion of about 10 minutes, and we're counting on your participation in these discussions. Please remain muted during the discussions, and use the raise hand function in Zoom if you would like to ask a question, and then I'll be able to organize everything. You can also use the chat box function, but please do that only for short questions. Otherwise, we'll be reading stuff that everybody can see, which is a bit unfortunate. Since we're a relatively intimate group of about 20 to 29, I see, we'll ask you to leave your cameras on for the discussion parts of this focus. And furthermore, the session will be recorded by CODART. We plan to end around 6:15 European time. And since that's in everybody's interest, I will be a stern timekeeper during the discussions. So when we started the preparation for this focus, I imagined all of us getting on tram 1 from The Hague to Delft to visit the exhibitions in tandem, spending a lot of time discussing individual pieces and ending with a glass of wine in one of the institutions. Of course, unfortunately, COVID made that impossible, and both exhibitions have truly been thwarted by the virus. The Hague opened and almost closed during the 2 lockdowns in the Netherlands, and Delft, while still open till the end of the month, has struggled with much smaller visitor numbers and loans that could not travel. In a way, it makes it all the more important that CODART pays attention to these fantastic exhibitions. Both exhibitions focus on a single material, and both are steeped in the decorative arts, and yet they are very different in character. One gives an overview, the other has a very particular focus. Silver examines the production of Delft silver during the early modern period and incorporates more general aspects of the use and production of Dutch silver, while Royal Blue, on the other hand, focuses and highlights the most important chapter of the history of Dutch Delftware, the works created for Stadhouder Willem III and Mary Stuart and their Anglo-Dutch court. This focuses primarily on the choices made by both museums in curating these exhibitions and less on the art historical content. For that, we would like to refer you to Peter Biesboer's comprehensive study of Delft gold and silversmiths published by Vanders, and the exhibition catalog Koninklijk Blauw from the Kunstmuseum, also published by Vanders. Full disclosure, the Rijksmuseum is a lender to both exhibitions, and I wrote for the Kunstmuseum catalog. So let's just say I'm familiar with both shows. Our main question today is how both museums succeeded in presenting these subjects with a fresh perspective that speaks both to a traditional group of connoisseurs as well as to a more general public. And we are very happy that Suzanne Lambooy, curator of applied arts at the Kunstmuseum, and Hester Schölvinck, currently founding partner of the Nieuwe Collectie, but starting January 1st, head of collections of Museum Prinsenhof Delft, are willing to answer our three main questions and discuss the topics virtually with all of us. So without further ado, I would like to ask Dennis to cue the first film that will talk about the position of the exhibition within the DNA and exhibition policies of both museums, since both shows had a very different genesis, as we will hear.
Suzanne, this exhibition has been a long time in the making, both the process of getting all the loans, but also the idea and the concept have been something that you have been working on for a long time. Could you tell us a little bit about its inception?
Yes, Royal Delft is another exhibition in a line of exhibitions in the Kunstmuseum. It started in 1995 with curator Marion van Aken. She did research in the archives and made several exhibitions. Her last exhibition was in 2007 on the vases with spouts, and it was a huge exhibition with international loans. And well, we thought, what would be next? That was the real big question. Personally, I've been working for 5 years as both curator of Palace Het Loo and the Kunstmuseum, and that's where the idea for this show was actually born, because with the garden curator Renske Eck, we were working on the reproductions of the garden pots with the Tichelaar company.
That you can also see scattered around the exhibition?
They're in the exhibition, exactly. And in that process of our research and the exhibition, we just both enjoyed it so much, and we realized there has been a book by curator Ries Erkelens, of course, but that was in the 90s, and there had never been a show. So in 300 years, this topic is about the Delftware that made the Netherlands so famous. It's the most beautiful Delftware from around 1690. So we thought, why has there never been a show trying to make it more thematic, just Royal Delftware of William and Mary? But of course it involves many loans from the UK, from France, from Germany. So it was just waiting for the right moment and the right museum. And in the end it worked out here.
And luckily, the temporary closure of Paleis Het Loo for their big remodeling also made it possible to have some fantastic loans from that institution here.
Exactly, we had 2 major loans, and actually Paleis Het Loo is our partner in this exhibition, and it's due to their renovation currently that all their pieces could come here. And that's where it starts, the Royal Delftware in the Netherlands, with Princess Mary, who first starts decorating the Dutch palaces, but once they become King and Queen of England, Scotland and Ireland, they go to the UK to make it really a big type of commissions set in the UK, and therefore the most historic place that still has Delftware of Mary is Hampton Court, the collection of Queen Elizabeth, and besides Palace Het Loo, we really needed the loans of the Queen to make the show possible. So yeah, it's been a process of 5 years, getting all the permissions for the loans, and it had to be a show before 2021 when Het Loo reopens next year.
And so some of the wonderful pieces, such as the pagoda that we're standing in front of now, but also in the back, the sort of the quintessential pieces that have told us so much about the Royal Delft Ware, the shards that were found in the previous remodeling of Het Loo, when it was made into a museum. The shards found there in the Queen's Garden are incredibly important in the show, but also in the history of what we know about this Royal Delft Ware.
Exactly. When we go back in history, we lose so many links to the past, but these fragments are just something we can touch, we can see, and we can reconstruct what Mary collected in the Netherlands. And it's also makes the show interesting to start little and small with an existing assortment of Delftware and then continue to these royal commissions with all their heraldry, the symbolism in it from Hampton Court. So yeah, it's start and finish that we want to show the 15 years she influenced Delftware.
Could you tell us a little bit about how this exhibition fits into the more general exhibition planning of het Kunstmuseum? Because in the preparations for this conversation, you were actually surprised by my surprise and delight that het Kunstmuseum was able to make this exhibition about a single material within the decorative arts.
Yes. True, because it has such a long-standing tradition here.
Yes.
That, Berlage actually designed the museum in 1935, so he's at the start of it all, because he really made a division that this ground floor area is meant for the applied arts with the incoming daylight, but he also said it's the most accessible to everyone. So when you see the applied arts downstairs, after that you move upstairs to the higher arts, the paintings and the sculptures. So we're still in this area, and that's why we always make applied arts exhibition here. But with a team of 10, we make 35 a year. So we divide who makes the big ones, who gets the largest budgets in a year. And this one is, of course, with all the incoming loans and the insurance. Transport's very expensive, so we can only do it every 15 years. And my predecessor, Marion van Aken-Vemers, is the curator who started the Delftware project here. So she made the first exhibition already in 1995, and then there's a really famous one in 2007 of the vases with spouts, so the flower pyramids. And we just continue in her spirit, but also our director, he really wants to focus on ceramics. And this is a thematic exhibition for us, because we even have porcelain, we have embroideries, paintings, but I know it's just surrounding one topic, but that's okay here. It's part of the exhibition plan.
Wonderful, thank you. Hester, we're standing in the silver exhibition in Delft. Can you tell us a little bit about the inception of this idea in the museum?
Well, we were very lucky because the former curator of the Frans Hals Museum, Peter Buisberg, he came to us and he had done an extensive research to Delft silversmith in the 17th and 18th century. Really complete research, which wasn't there yet. Mm-hmm. So he came to us and he presented it, and he said, well, you really have to make an exhibition about it. And of course we felt very obliged to do it, because one of the themes of the museums is Masters of Delft. But to be honest, we also hesitated, because decorative arts aren't to be known to be really big blockbusters. Absolutely. And even though we don't need blockbusters all the time, not at all, we do need visitors, of course. So we thought, if we're going to do this, We do want to do it, but then we really need a good story for a broader audience, and we also need spectacular design.
And we can see the result here, this swooping display of cabinets and display cases that we'll talk about a little bit later, that really gives a modern edge to this topic, which is wonderful, I think. How does the exhibition, you said a little bit already, but how does this exhibition fit into the general exhibition policy of the museum?
Yeah, as I already told you, we have themes. We have 3 themes. We have William the Silent, of course Delftware, and Masters of Delft. And so we want our exhibitions to fit in with one of those themes. And this exhibition, of course, clearly fits into Masters of Delft. But when we were making it, when we were working on it, it turned out to have a very strong link with William the Silent as well. Because when he came to Delft in 1572, well, he didn't come alone, of course. He came with the whole court. And with the court, a lot of craftsmen and artists and, well, as we know, merchants came to Delft and to the northern Netherlands, of course. And so the guild that was here got a lot of commissions and could flourish.
So his arrival in the city really was the starting point of Delft Silver and the starting point of this exhibition too.
Absolutely. And because we didn't know, to be also honest, a lot about our silver collection, but we do have a beautiful collection. For instance, well, these Nautilus cups, they're our own. And they were on display, but not so good actually, and without any context. And the good thing about it is that after this exhibition, there's a whole room with 17th century Masters of Delft, and they will get a much more prominent space within the museum and with context this time.
And that's really what you want an exhibition to do, isn't it?
Yes.
To teach you more about your own collection as well. That's wonderful.
And it really did. It taught us a lot.
So these were the first 2 clips, and I hope they give a little bit of a sense of the exhibition as well. I'd like to see if there are any questions already. I don't see any raised hands yet. I think it's probably good to mention here that actually what we discussed, what Hester and I discussed in the galleries, is that you know, both silver and Delftware and decorative arts in general are represented in almost any Dutch museum and in many museums with Dutch art abroad. And their provenance is often date back to the 19th century, to the founding of the museums. But shifting priorities have often relocated these objects to storage. And I think the contrast between the Prinsenhof here and the Kunstmuseum is very telling, because I think the story of the Prinsenhof sort of accidentally finding this exhibition is a very recognizable one for many curators in museums that also have decorative arts, but for which it's not the primary focus. Hester, can you say a little bit more about that, about the hesitations, but also what ultimately made you decide to go ahead with the silver exhibition?
Well, as I told in the video, first of all, because it's of course one of our themes, but also because it had been not even, I think in Kunstmuseum it was 25 years, but with us it was 60 years ago since the last time that we gave attention to the silverware we had in our collection. And of course, the extensive research of Peter Biesboer. So that was it. Yes.
Yeah. And Suzanne, I was amazed to hear that you make 35 exhibitions a year with a team of 10 curators. I'm absolutely gobsmacked by those numbers. That clearly is a policy of abundance and of choice. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's always, it allows us to make bigger shows when we have a few years to prepare, but we have to make a lot of instant shows with our own collection. And the applied arts area, we rotate. So we have old and new applied arts. Sometimes it's a contemporary designer. Our next show will be on a Rotterdam artist, Bas van Beek, completely different than 17th century Delft ware. So we alternate and we change. And also starting December 19th will be a small show on porcelain decorated in The Hague in the 18th century from our own collection, and Chinese glass from our collection. So yeah, that we work on several exhibitions at the same time.
Yeah, and that also, I also think, is that the visitor knows with you that you can always see a very different scala of exhibitions. And in the Prinsenhof, there's one show at a time. So that's really different.
Yeah, and I think that's that sort of that huge array. And I think that difference also is perhaps why it's when you have such a variety of presentations, and also presentations very much steeped in your own collection, it's perhaps sometimes it's easier to find sort of these discoveries within your own collection. That I think the silver was a little bit for Delft, and that of course we all know we make all the time, sort of rediscovering topics and revisiting certain topics. Another thing that we talked about a little bit that I would like to address now is how the knowledge that an exhibition generates is consolidated into the permanent collection. And Suzanne, I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more. And I think many people will be familiar with the long-standing tradition of researching Delftware in The Hague, but I think if you could just give us a little bit of an overview how that project started and how this fits into that tradition, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, it started with our head of collections, Professor Titus Aliens. He's no longer in the museum, but he was a professor at the Leiden University. And together with curator Marion van Aken, they started a project to really find out in the archives of Delft the attributions of the marks. Together with several researchers, they spent several years transcribing the archives and at the same time finding marked objects in our collections and elsewhere to see if the attribution of the mark was the same as the aesthetic period the objects belong to. And they made a lot of new attributions, and they started with a first book with marks, and you and I and Suzanne Cleaver, who's also attending from the Prinsenhof tonight, we all used the dates and the marks attributed by her and the group in several Delft Earthenware History of a National Icon publications. And that was the start of buying objects that are marked and that will attribute more to this research that has already started.
And so this exhibition is can really be seen in that line, but it's also a little bit of a departure from it in the choice that you made to really focus on this very specific period. I hope we're not losing you. In focusing on the period of William and Mary and focusing on the objects directly connected to them. And Hester, can you say a little bit, you already mentioned that you have plans to find better places for some of the silver from your own collection that is in the exhibition now. Can you say a little bit more about how you plan to consolidate Peter Biesberg's research, but also the knowledge that you institutionally gained from making this exhibition? Since you will be head of collections, I can ask you this.
Unmute. Yes, well, first of all, the most beautiful pieces from the 17th century will be placed in the permanent collection of Delft Masters. So that's first. But it also inspired me, and I don't know how yet, but to do something with the 18th century. But I'll get back to that.
Yeah. All the decorative arts curators are doing a little happy dance now. Wonderful. Yeah. And that, I think finding inspiration within your own collection is one of the things that you're diving into a topic like this can really bring, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and the research, Peter Biesberg, who really found one silversmith, Jasper Mes, who really followed Willem of Orange to Antwerp, was sort of piece of the puzzle, which made it all click. So that was really good.
Yeah. Which connected it back to one of your main themes.
Yeah, and for us, it's always very important. So why do you make an exhibition in the Prinsenhof? Well, with Delft Silverware, of course, it's obvious, but still you sort of wanted to give a broader context for people who do not know a lot about silver.
Wonderful. I'm looking around the virtual room, and I don't see any questions yet. Hester is waving at us. Yes.
I did raise my hand.
I'm so sorry.
I have a sort of prosaic question. I heard Hester say, well, it's not a blockbuster theme, and I agree. It's hard to get a subject like that to get a lot of public to your museum. But on the other hand, I'm curious, how many visitors did you attract with the Delft Silver exhibition? Because to my mind, it was all over the news, or everyone was talking about it. Maybe that was because you couldn't get some objects, but still, I'm curious. How many visitors are you happy with the amount of visitors you attracted?
No, but that's because of Corona.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Absolutely not. We're very happy with all the attention that it got.
Yeah, it did get a lot of attention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is good.
We're planning. No. But that we'll get into that later too. No. I agree, and I think that if Corona wouldn't have been there, I'm very sorry that it did, because I'm very curious what the numbers would have been then. Right now, of course, it's dramatically, but that's not because of the silver.
No, I'm sure. Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Jalfan, so I'm sorry, this was completely my fault. I didn't have the right screen on.
No, it's okay.
So I now see your hands.
No, it's okay. I was sure. Let me just lower it so it doesn't get confusing, because otherwise people think, oh, is it like still raised? But anyway, okay. I was just thinking about Hester's comment. Oops, I don't even know how to lower it. It doesn't matter. Okay.
It's okay.
I'm terrible at Zoom. But I think about your question about how, like, it's just been, sort of languishing in storage. And one of the problems with silver languishing in storage is that it tarnishes. At least that's the experience that I've been having. And I was just curious, if you didn't really have like dedicated spaces, or not thinking too much about the presentation, did you even have the support for putting them out? I mean, or just sort of like, because that polishing it's also a lot of like, if you don't have people on staff, you have to find contractors, and then like also like then the storage, and I was just I was just floored by all these names I've never heard of, and it was fantastic. And I've been looking a lot at 18th century Dutch glass, and I was also thinking, I was like, wonder if there's some crossover there. But anyway, silver is always a problem. It's just, you can, polish it one year, and the next year it just starts to tarnish. And so I was just really curious if you had that support from your institution.
Well, that I don't know exactly, because I haven't been around long enough around the Prinsenhof. So maybe Suzanne will know. But what we did do when we started this exhibition, the what you call it, collectiebeheerders, the collection managers, they immediately went on a polishing course, which was very helpful, and so also to secure that we can do that. But maybe Suzanne Kluver can because she's been with the museum longer. She knows more about it.
Suzanne Kluver, curator of applied arts at Museum Prinsenhof Delft.
Yes, thank you. We've had, of course, as Hester already mentioned, we had the Nautilus cups already on display, and we didn't really polish them in the time that I got at Prinsenhof that I know of. But of course, it is a problem because silver tarnishes, and we've talked about it, how to keep it in storage. Do you want to keep it in a special safe without air getting to the object so it doesn't tarnish as fast or at all? But we never thought, we actually never did anything about it. So sometimes now, if we want to display some silver, we have to polish it. And after displaying it, I think it will go back into that state.
We're actually very happy in our current move of our storage. We're very happy with sealing silver. So no fancy schmancy cases, just it looks horrible in storage, but it prevents tarnishing when it's in storage, and that's been a game changer for us, I must say, in also being able to quickly have a turnaround in silver. And of course, we're very lucky to have conservators on staff, but the sealing has been an absolute game changer for us. So I would like to close this topic and ask Dennis to cue the next two clips that talk about the design choices made in both exhibitions.
Suzanne, this next gallery shows the wonderful effect of daylight in the galleries wonderfully. Could you tell us a little bit about the choices that were made here?
Yes, Berlage designed the museum as a daylight museum, and that changes the concept of an exhibition, because you don't have a black box. You can make a theatrical exhibition with big prints on walls. It has to be really intended to have the right light on the objects, but also to make sure you don't damage any light sensitive objects. So textiles are more in the center of the exhibition, and paintings are really kept in the right direction. But here our designer is Marcel Smalgemeijer, and he's great at both the applied arts and modern or contemporary, but he really loves the puzzle. So this is a complex exhibition area where there's no route. You have 4 entryways, so it has to make sense, but it also has to be part of the building. And our director wants the architecture to be respected. But of course we have Mary and the story of the water gallery, the Hampton Court Palace along the Thames River, where she had her garden pavilion with the Delft ware. And here is where the spot is with our water pond. So of course, there had to be a water gallery part devoted next to the water. And that's where we combine the tiles from the Rijksmuseum.
And it's really wonderful for the first time to see so many of these water gallery tiles together. It's lovely. They came from literally all over the world, but it's wonderful to have the one from the Rijksmuseum and the one from the Prinsenhof, where, of course, we're talking about the silver exhibition, came together. And in presenting these with prints of the prints of Marot, you really get a sense of what that water gallery would have looked like. And I think the daylight really helps with that, because it would have been a light and airy room, and that really comes across this way, even though it must have been a much more complicated puzzle than it usually is. And Suzanne, we're standing here, of course, we're standing in front of the tiles, but this painting functions a little bit as a backdrop for the tiles.
True, yes, very much. Marcel intended to have portraits of Mary as a princess, of a queen, as a personal touch that you can relate a bit better. He positioned them at axes in the exhibition, so each gallery has a viewpoint of a portrait. And I really wanted them to be originals, so no prints in this case.
Yay!
But just like painting exhibitions sometimes have applied arts in them, I thought this is applied arts with a painting backdrop. So yes, it's the second layer, but in both cases it works, I think, because you have the ceramic face and then the painted face, and they really support each other.
That's wonderful. Suzanne, in this gallery we see three of the the masterpieces of this exhibition, three iconic pieces of Royal Delft ware from Hampton Court Palace that are, well, it's truly amazing to have these pieces in the Netherlands for the first time in many, many years, certainly together. Individual pieces have been in exhibitions before, but not the three of them together, which is wonderful. You also see here very clearly how these monumental pieces of Delft ware need a lot of space, both literally in the sense that it's a large showcase, but also to be able to walk around them. Could you tell us a little bit about the design process in laying out where individual pieces were planned, but also the incredible puzzle that it must have been in these galleries particularly to find the proper place for every object?
Yes, absolutely. It was a big puzzle, but like you say, we show individual pieces of pairs, and it was a choice that we were offered to loan all models, and that we could choose one, so one would remain in England, and that was the intention, that we could show this development of models and shapes. So especially that's why we chose to have individual pieces, but they're so big that we didn't need lots to fill the showcases. But since the details of the decoration and the shape are so elaborate, our designer Marcel really wanted you to be able to walk along the objects on all sides.
Which is of course something that plays such an important part in decorative arts exhibitions in general.
Exactly. Yes, so you can really look at these details from close up. And then the galleries determined the layout. We puzzled actually for 5 months, because you have these 4 entrances, but you still want to start with China, then the development of Palais at Low, turning into these big pieces at Hampton Court. Then we continue to the current royals, but also the oranges, ceramics, the gardens, contemporary pieces. So it was just a big puzzle until we could find the showcases that fit the objects group.
And so can you tell us a little bit about the design of the showcases and the pedestals themselves? Because they're quite a departure from the Baroque opulence of the objects.
Yes, and we didn't have the Baroque here. We have a minimalist Berlage building. So if this would be in Het Loo, you would have the natural decor of the Baroque. Here we thought we have to go minimalist. If we can't do Baroque, we go back to the Berlage architecture, and Marcel was inspired by Donald Judd furniture, and we have his work, 20th century Zero artist, and he chose the colors for each gallery. We like the contrast of the blue and white on dark pedestals, on dark colors. So when you move in gradually within the galleries, the pedestals become darker colors. But here the daylight is so prominent that we chose the lightest gray, and then we move on to brown and green depending on the topics. But yeah, I loved the contrast between old and new.
And you did choose to put more than one object in a showcase. You really made thematic groupings.
Yes. Yes, we think these pieces are stronger together. If they connect to one another, you see a correspondence in pattern or colors. And yeah, Marcel's very experienced in the applied arts, because you really have to feel the shape and the distance and the pattern. And he was also very determined that these pieces were independent in showcases, so you can walk around them and really see from all angles back and forth. And yeah, I think we are very lucky. These are big pieces. Normally we have small pieces, so for us this is a very empty exhibition actually.
Thank you. Hester, can you tell us a little bit about the design of the exhibition? Because it's quite an extraordinary array of display cases combined with older cabinets. And what's the idea behind it?
Well, we asked 2 very prominent designers, Eveline Merks and Abby Steinhauser, and they have an architectural background, interior architect background, and they actually came up with the idea to use really old cabinets with the cases. So because we bought all these cabinets in a thrift shop, a huge thrift shop. I mean, warehouses and warehouses full. Wow. Yeah, and we bought at once about 20 of them, I think, 22. And the idea is really to make them shine like they did in the 19th and 20th century. So, yeah, that's the idea. And it was very clever of them, because when we gave them the commission for this exhibition, we didn't give them the only to make this exhibition, but also the exhibition after this one about porcelain. Because one of the challenges of this exhibition was the budget.
Of course.
Yeah. We didn't have a really big budget. So what we did is we combined the building budget of the two exhibitions, and we said to the designers, we want you to make the cases for the both of them, but we do want two completely different exhibitions.
So two for the price of one. That's quite a challenge.
Well, and it was a big puzzle, and we didn't make it easy for us or for them, because they sort of had to design the exhibitions together. Because if you look at this case, it's a little bit too big for the silverware that's displayed in it right now. But that's because afterwards there's going to be a big
a porcelain charger.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly.
So you needed the space already. So you were basically designing two exhibitions at the same time.
We were.
Wow.
We were.
And the cases that you used, were they made for the exhibitions, or were they in-house already?
No, well, we wanted to have them custom made, but that of course went way over budget. So we didn't do that. We made an inventory of all the cases we had, and so they also had to work with that. This one actually is made, but most of them, almost every other one isn't made, was already in our possession.
So that must limit the choices of what you can and cannot display as well, because
absolutely,
rather than designing the case for the object, you had to find the objects for the case. It's a very sort of, it's a very different way of working.
Yeah, and also make some cases fuller than you originally would, or in the perfect world you would, or maybe or the other way around, like here, that you have more space up. Yeah, but on the other hand, it also helps you, because at one point I knew, so I have so many cases and I have these objects and no way it's going to fit. So I was forced to make really strong choices. So not half, but a third.
Wow.
Yeah. Was kill your darlings. Yeah, and to be honest, I think it made the exhibition better, to make it a little bit more compact. And there's only one piece that I really miss, and that's a big candle, because then I could have told the story better about how candlelight reflects on the silver. So that's the only one I really miss, and the other ones, I must be honest, I already forgot. No, really, but yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Well, and the fact that the design forces you to be creative with the objects, I think is actually wonderful. And it's a great way to think about these exhibitions where you have a lot of objects, checklists that can go on and on. Sometimes you need an outside force, such as the design, to force you to make choices that will ultimately make it better for the public.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
So thank you again. Of course, the double design in the Prinsenhof exhibition is absolutely fascinating, and I was wondering, Hester, if you can tell us a little bit about what will happen after the silver, how that combination will be made.
Well, the cases will stay the same, and the old cabinets, and also the whole podium, all the wood we used is also going to be reused. And so the builders, we also have this, we have the same designers, but also the same builders. They will come in well, first all the silverware goes out, of course, and then we literally cut up everything, and that exhibition is going to be in themes and is going to be scattered around the rooms. There will be 3 rooms, and everything will be reused. So not the cabinets, the woods, and the cases. And when we started with silver, we already knew which porcelain was going into which cases.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
So it will look completely different.
Yeah, and right now everything is dark blue in auto paint, what you call it, and
kind of car lacquer, I suppose. Yeah.
And the porcelain, Chinese porcelain, will be in completely different colors, all very bright, very. They were inspired by how shops sometimes look. So it's going to be very bright and with details and stuff. So it's going to be completely different. Like with silver, it's just one gesture, these 2 sort of boats, and porcelain is going to be completely different. So that's very exciting.
Wonderful. And I think that really brings us to, of course, the inevitability of using showcases when displaying certainly smaller objects of decorative arts, and the extra challenges that sometimes brings to a designer, but also the extra costs of that. I was wondering if both of you could react to, reusing these cases. And I know, Suzanne, that you also reused some of the existing cases in the museum that were in the museum already. Can talk a little bit about the idea of sustainability behind that as well, because of course we all know how often these cases just disappear again and are remade, which is expensive but also really taxing for the environment. Suzanne, maybe first.
Yes, I completely agree that it's very important, and actually the designer emphasized on it as well as the museum. We're reusing one of the galleries for the next exhibitions, and the others go in storage, just because it's the material we used this time is very nice and we can reuse it. But sometimes it's not possible, but then we try to find different purposes for either the wood to be reused. We now have a flower wall that we put up against wooden boards. The wooden boards have been reused in another gallery to make a wall. So we really try to minimize what we throw away. We have a carpet in the middle, and we've given that in, I think, about 8 pieces to our staff members who wish to take it home. So like everything gets a purpose.
And Hester, was this, apart from the strains of the budget, was this also the fact that you reuse cabinets from a thrift shop is actually making this point more even more clearly in a way, I suppose?
Yes, yeah, and we also want to continue working like this, because sometimes you just have to make a case custom made because you don't have it. But what we also learned is that we have to be very clear to the designer beforehand, sort of, this is the material you have to work with, and
especially with materials that such as especially silver material that tarnishes, and that is that can be very can be influenced by all kinds of materials in the closed environment of a showcase. So I think that's another thing that that you really have to be mindful of when you start embarking on a project like this.
Yes, and the safety as well. Yeah.
And so you said be clear to the designers from the get-go. Is there any other advice you can give from this dual project in terms of what to convey to a designer when working on an exhibition like this with a traditional decorative arts medium and a very modern design?
Well, I can recommend it, and I can also advise well, of course, first you have to have your own storyline or your own first concept, but then as soon as possible, ask them to look at your concept, and then because they can also sort of influence you again, which I really like always, to sort of make it a two-way street. First of all, we both together, and also because of my talks with students, we came up with looking glasses in the backs. Well, we'll talk about that later, but ask them as soon as possible to look at your concept.
Suzanne, do you have anything to add? You've worked, Marcel Smogenmeijer has done a great number of shows for the Kunstmuseum. Can you add anything to that?
I fully agree with Hester, and that's why we like to work with Marcel, because it's an interaction. He really knows the objects, and we once said he gives us an identity crisis because he just asks, what is Delftware? What is it you want to show here? Why is it different from the next showcase? And you need a designer that really gets into the topic and tries to focus on what you want to show and what the visitor would like to see, and how he made a showcase with the taste that we'll see later on. That, it's just an inspiring process to work with designers, to see what they do with your concept. You just have to let it go, and then it becomes much better if you have their influence.
And be open for their critical questions. Sometimes also sort of, I remember the sort of cups that are made for the Heemraadschap and stuff, and the designer said to me, "Oh, I think they're hideous, and it's just like it's just like the World Cup for the football for soccer." But then I thought, well, she's right, because of course it is an example how we right now make the football cup. So I even use that for my text.
That's really wonderful. Looking at the clock slightly, I'm wondering if there are any pressing questions about the design process. Yes, Josefina.
Yes, I was wondering if Peter Biesbos, if I correctly, if he was if he was involved in the making of the exhibition too, or because he handed over the research, but did you have a carte blanche in terms of the concept and the design and the choices of the objects, or was he, in other ways involved too?
Absolutely. He was guest curator. I really sat next to him before I made the concept for the exhibition, and of course we discussed it with him. But then the design was really and that whole process was in hands of the museum. And of course he was very sorry that 1/3 of the objects didn't find a place. So that was, of course, we had discussions about that, and sometimes he convinced us, but it really has to go in. So that was a big discussion. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I would like to ask Dennis to gear up the next and final theme and set of clips that is about the intended audience or public. And of course, COVID had a huge impact on and we heard that from Hester already, on the cold visitor numbers of the exhibition. So neither institutions have normal data about this yet. I think it's really important to see what their thoughts behind this were.
Suzanne, this is a bit of a departure from the very clean lines we've seen everywhere else in the exhibition. Can we see this as a bit of a gesture to the general public, to give them a little bit more of context to understand what these objects were used for.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's how Marcel intended it. We wanted to show the objects made in Delft, inspired by all the new flavors, the new foods, the new drinks coming.
I see chocolate, I see peppers, I see cinnamon.
Yeah. Yes, sweetmeats, anything that is new, and what Delft made dishes for that. King William had at Hampton Court a chocolate kitchen. And so we tried to find chocolate cups, and Marcel just asked, can we show them with these foods? Because you need the visual connection. So we asked all the lenders, including Hedlo, but also the Prinsenhof and private collectors, is it okay if we display it in this way? And of course with plastic, and the salt is replaced by sugar. So we try to do it very much the right way, so the objects don't get harmed, but it's one of the audience's favorites. It's really...
I can imagine, because it's so different. And talking about sort of the different types of audiences that you were expecting for this exhibition, of course, Corona made everything very different for this exhibition, because both when it opened and at the end, museums in the Netherlands were in lockdown. But still, do you have a sense of the different types of audiences that this exhibition drew?
We don't analyze it, so I can't be certain, but we saw that before the exhibition opened, the Royal Delft page was actually one of the most clicked on or liked pages and the marketing department was really like, oh my God, everybody loves the Delftware. So you think paintings or anything else, but actually it turned out there's a great interest for it. And we try to display it in a way that it's both aesthetically inviting and there's a layer for those who want to learn more or see more. But we also added the flowers from Anne Wood from Minneapolis. That's one of the things we really thought about. How do we display all these flower pyramids? I didn't want to use silk if possible, and you can't put real flowers in them, so can we find artworks that show this connection between crafts, between nature, and her artwork turned out to be the perfect match.
And it's also very Instagrammable.
Exactly, yes. I got the idea because I followed her on Instagram myself, so absolutely. And yeah, and those were the things that were quite difficult in Corona times, because Anne would be here to install it herself, and just in that week, the American president closed the airways. She couldn't come, so we found all sorts of creative solutions, and couriers couldn't come, so we did the video installations and all that, but it turned out to work quite well. And the connections with these materials, with the flowers, but also some modern or contemporary pieces, I hope it invites the general audience just as well as the Delft enthusiasts.
Wonderful. Suzanne, here, first of all, we see the only pair of pyramids in the exhibition, and we can see that they're not complete. And actually, you're taking the audience on a very exciting journey that the museum has been on since last December.
Yes, unintended, but it turned out to be a great coincidence that in December these two pyramids came up for auction in Paris from a noble family, and with the Dutch funding Vereniging Rembrandt, we could buy them for the collection of the Netherlands. Yay! So, there's a pair at the Rijksmuseum, one at the V&A. We presented an example here from the V&A, and they're very complete, the ones we got. There's just some minor restoration, but only the tops are missing, and the tops are actually the busts of Mary. So we thought in the exhibition we really want to show it in the original way, because the family had put finials on them of parts of Chinese copies of Delftware.
I mean, very creative.
Exactly, that they fit it is great. But when they arrived in January in the museum, we immediately sent 2 sections to the Tichelaar pottery in Friesland. They still have the original tin glaze technique. But the glaze is so white, it turned out to be extremely difficult. They've now made about 5 sets, and it's dripping Mary, the glaze lets go because of the high amount of the tin, or it's too yellow, and now they're almost complete, but we never intended it or thought it would take so long. But actually it's a good eye catcher that people wonder where's the top, so we can explain it's really a difficult craft even nowadays with the electric ovens.
Once you had the design of the cases, you knew the size of the cases, you made a choice in the exhibition to display objects by their use, so more thematically and less by style or art historically. Can you tell us a little bit about that and about the public you had in mind for that?
Yes, well, actually, I first made the storyline. So the design followed, right. And then we sort of had to fit that story in the cases. But yeah, you're right. I had a broad audience in mind for this exhibition. So what I really wanted to do is to tell them what these objects were used for, because to be honest, I was quite new in the subject as well. So, for instance, these burners, for me, you know, it was also new that they could be used outside, or they could be used more in a private setting instead of having the servants around you all the time. So that was the kind of information I really wanted to give to the audience, because I think that as soon as you know what stuff is used for, that you look differently.
Yeah, and becomes much more personal in a way.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So when we were looking at this display case before, I said, oh, it's such an interesting choice to put a Baroque or a Louis XIV piece together with a Louis XV piece. But when you think about the exhibition more in terms of use, that makes much more sense. So it's an interesting choice that I think talks more to the general public perhaps than to the collectors that would have wanted all the says together with all the says, etc.
And for me, actually, that these three styles were in one case was an extra, because then, well, at the back of the cabinets, we explain more about the styles, and here it's such a perfect example to see these three styles next to each other, and also because it's made by the same silversmith, so it also tells another story that this silversmith was really a craftsman who, if you wanted this style, he made this style for you. But if you wanted in another one, a couple of years ago, after that, he would make that style for you.
So it was actually an added feature.
Absolutely.
It became that ultimately.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine, and you tackled that idea of silver being an object, a topic that's kind of distant to people today. Perhaps you also tackled that beautifully in the film that's on display in this gallery, but that people can also watch when they visit the exhibition online on your website. Can you tell us a little bit about that process of creating the film and why you decided to add that?
Well, yeah. Actually, what you said, I wanted to narrow the distance, because what we did, we asked people, how do you feel about your silver? So we interviewed three people: a young silversmith, a woman who had beautiful silver heirlooms, and then a collector. An older man, a collector. And we start the movie with a baby holding, what you call
a
it?
rattle.
A rattle, exactly. So you also very much see the generations, and they talk with so much love about their silver, and it makes so clear that most of us probably do have silver, and maybe they are heirlooms, and that it's such a beautiful project which really fits in this time where it's better to reuse things, even things that you can use for centuries. Instead, yeah, just also to put it against the IKEA, where you can just, if you want to have green cutlery, you buy it, green cutlery, and then you throw it out after a couple of years. And well, this is very sustainable if you come to think of it. Maybe a little bit more expensive, but maybe not in the long run.
So sustainability and passion combined. I think
exactly.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
And to the collector that would scream because you put things from different style periods together, what would you say?
Well, what I noticed from the collectors and the experts who come, and that's also what I think we did, we brought it together for the first time actually in 60 years. This silverware from Delft is together, and I think they really appreciate that we give it the attention that it needs.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So in the comments in the chat box, I see not so much a question from Zhao Fan, but certainly she's astounded that the conservators signed off on that beautiful display case at the
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I was just like, there was no way that my colleagues in conservation, environmental, everything, like they would. I mean, we can't even have food in our offices because we're like next to a storage room. And it's just like, I had to like fight to have coffee. I'm like, oh no, we just have coffee and tea, but like cookies have to go into like tins. And it's because I mean, I think they're also be concerned about attracting pests into the museum environment, not just the cases. It's just about pest control management in general. So that was just like kudos.
Well, we were lucky that the showcase was completely closed off, so there couldn't be much attraction of animals or things like that. And we have in the inner court of our museum we have fresh flowers, so that's always also a discussion. But at Hatlo Palace, they have in the historical furnishings they have big bouquets of fresh flowers, and that's because William III gave an order to his gardener to have fresh bouquets in the rooms of Mary every 2 or 3 weeks. And because of that 17th century order, they can still have fresh flowers up to today. So it's, yeah, there's always discussion, but so far it seems to go okay, not attracting more pests or anything.
Yeah, and lenders that were very, very willing to go with it, with the beautiful concept, which I think is also, you need. Yeah. Since this was the last of the 3 clips, I do encourage you to ask any questions that you still have about the clips that we just saw, but about the exhibitions in general. In the meantime, I'd like to ask Suzanne and Hester to react to another point of discussion often in choosing these kinds of topics for an exhibition, is that they're not perhaps the easiest in a world where inclusivity and diverse voices are becoming increasingly important in our exhibition programming. We of course talked about here the exhibition at the Rembrandthuis last week in a focus, but both exhibitions have tried in some ways to incorporate that a little bit. I was wondering if you could speak to that, perhaps Suzanne first and then Hester.
Yes, we tried. Well, we thought the theme of English-Dutch artistic relations was quite appropriate in the year of Brexit. So it would have started beginning of this year. Now it's the end of the year, but we thought it was very symbolic to show that the one time we were connected in our history, we had the heydays of our Delftware. But of course, we start with Asia, and Delftware is copying Chinese porcelain. Chinese porcelain was traded by the Dutch East India Company. So we tried to make one display about, we called it People from Afar, that the copies in Delft were of other cultures and other people. And that way we also addressed that it was not a golden age for everyone, that the wealth of one was in favor it wasn't in favor of everybody. And we hope it's just a small sign, because this is not about the 17th century, but we avoided the words golden age, just like the Amsterdam Museum set the tone to do that. And we try to be more inclusive in our language use. But of course, it's just a small topic in this show, whereas other shows, like our Islamic show we had 2 years ago, was more focused on that topic.
And Hester?
Well, one of the walls on the walls we have more the background of the more general information, and one of the walls we dedicated to the downside of the silver, and especially the huge amount of silver in the 18th century, to give attention of where the silver comes from. And it comes also from the mines in South America, where enslaved people were forced to get it out of the mines. So to really, we also call it pronken ten koste van wat, so to show off at cost of what. So and in the normal text, also when we have the sugar containers, to just say where the sugar comes from, so that you can also see the whole system.
So in both exhibitions, with topics that might not at first glance seem to be able to incorporate these elements of inclusivity, you've both succeeded in at least addressing that a little bit, which I think is wonderful. There's a question from Monique, which is quite a big question on why do you think paintings are more popular than decorative arts, and would visitors benefit from more interdisciplinary exhibitions, less art history and a lot more focus on use, owners, etc. I kind of would like to open the floor to all of you to react to this, because that's really, I mean, in the backdrop of organizing this this focus, of course, that was on our minds to do something with. Kirsty, you would like to react?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, we're actually we were wondering the same when we are preparing a new permanent exhibition, and we were wondering the same. Are we addressing the questions that our public has? So what we're going to do in the next year probably is take one object that we are planning to put in this new permanent collection, and we will be calling it the artwork of the month. And we'll put it in our foyer, in our entrance space. Of course, a copy of it, a reproduction, and we'll have a sort of sign saying what it is and when it was made. And then we'll ask the question: what would you like to know? What sort of question? Because we were, well, exactly because of what Monique just said. Are we addressing the right questions? Is everyone interested in the artist's point of view, or do we need to address use or ownership too? So maybe a suggestion.
That's a great suggestion, because I think also neither exhibition really talks extensively and Delft a little bit more than The Hague about the production process, which is always a sort of go-to for decorative arts exhibitions, because that's sort of more tangible than difficult questions about style. So Kirsty, I think that's a wonderful way of really posing the question to the public. And I think it also boils down again to, you need this much broader base of knowledge about these objects to then ultimately be able to give the public interesting answers to their questions. And of course, that's where I think a lot of museums, certainly museums with curators responsible for any and all arts before 1800, sometimes struggle with, and where a network like CODART can really help to bring not only people but also knowledge together. With that, I'm virtually looking around the room to see if there are any other questions.
I was going to ask about when I did the virtual tour, I was so fascinated by those salt cellars in the Delft exhibition. And I was just wondering, and the label I found to be a little vague. And I was wondering if there had been like further discussion to maybe embellish on it, because I think that gets to what I was going to address about the question about popularity. I think so much of it, the part of it, it's like the discipline, right? Decorative arts is like we focus on like the Cooper Hewitt collection was collected according to medium, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we used iconography as a way of dating. But what if we turned our attention to the iconography, right? Because why do people love paintings? People love paintings because they tell stories, right?
Yeah.
And these are stories that they can like see right there. But you have so many stories, right? If we like went beyond regarding them as decoration, because they're very loaded iconography. I mean, this stuff gets, I mean, it's like some of the most racist images you find in decorative arts, right? But we just like, oh, we're like, oh, it's just decorative. Like, it's just fun. And it's like, no, it's not. Like, you know, and this is stuff that people would have interacted with on a daily basis. The paintings would have hung in palaces, but, you know, you were getting, you know, your tea caddies, right? Are just, they're perpetuating very, you know, like racist stereotypes. And, you know, there's a way in which I think that if we, you know, maybe you bring them together, but I feel like there are so many ways in which you can, if we start to address, you know, thinking about porcelain as a canvas of some kind, right? That we can get the public, it's just like much smaller, but I think there are ways to do it.
You're very right, and especially about the salt cases. And when they will be on show in our Delft master room, we will go into that aspect, because for me too, when it was all up, I thought, no, we missed something there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very right.
Because I was just also thinking about the representation.
But luckily, we can restore it.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but yeah, true.
Yeah. So I think many ideas to find ways of integrating the decorative arts in the stories we tell. I think also there is a bit of a risk, and I'm so glad that that therefore the Kunstmuseum, with such a long-standing tradition of displaying decorative arts, was part of this discussion as well, that it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, you know, the decorative arts doesn't draw in crowds, so we're not spending that much budget on the exhibition design or on the marketing, hence not a lot of people come to see the show. So I think there's also a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy risk there. But for now, I'm afraid we're already 5 minutes over our allotted time. So with that, I would like to thank you all very, very much for your participation. Hester and Suzanne, thank you for agreeing to do this and for letting all of us experience the process of making these exhibitions, and for a very open discussion. So thank you. Thank you to all of you who joined us virtually today. A recording of the entire session, the clips, and our discussion will be made available to CODART members soon. And CODART will, of course, keep you informed about that. And lastly, CODART will send out an evaluation form to all participants of the session. We kindly ask you to fill this out because it really helps us to organize future virtual or non-virtual activities. So with that, I think we will end this session. And again, thank you very, very much for your attention and your contributions today.